there's an option. So, Carl, thank you very much for joining me on this session of rock hard we call "Fly on the Wall," because it's. I wish I was a fly on the studio walls and see what happened behind the scenes during the making of great albums. And Tyranny, as you can see, is one of my all-time favorite albums. I think that your only participation in a compilation CD ever in Shadow Gallery, in a Shadow Gallery history, a cover mount CD, was for Tyranny for Metal Invader magazine, where we had War for Sale and Stiletto in the Sun as one track on the compilation CD. Is that so? I think it's the only Shadow Gallery participation on a cover mount CD in a magazine. Is that's true? And I didn't want to split the songs, so we had them as one song, 2 in 1, so that it doesn't take the position of 2 songs over there. So, Carl, thank you very much for joining me on this session of rock hard we call "Fly on the Wall," because it's. I wish I was a fly on the studio walls and see what happened behind the scenes during the making of great albums. And Tyranny, as you can see, is one of my all-time favorite albums. I think that your only participation in a compilation CD ever in Shadow Gallery, in a Shadow Gallery history, a cover mount CD, was for Tyranny for Metal Invader magazine, where we had War for Sale and Stiletto in the Sun as one track on the compilation CD. Is that so? I think it's the only Shadow Gallery participation on a cover mount CD on a magazine. Is that's true? And I didn't want to split the songs, so we had them as one song, 2 in 1, so that it doesn't take the position of 2 songs over there. So, why did you have that gap between Carved in Stone and Tyranny from the time that you didn't tour? Is it true that you had been rehearsing for live shows back then? And what happened when you didn't tour, fan?
I'll step back and say that like one of my all-time favorite bands is Gamma Ray from Germany. Kai Hansen he's such a huge influence. Ralph Sheepers, I put him in rarefied air with Jeff Tate and Ronnie James Dio in terms of vocal quality and performance. So I was this huge Gamma Ray fan. And I was doing an interview with a magazine in Europe. And I remember talking about, just like how much I loved that band. And it turned out the interviewer was friends with Kai Hansen. And I said, "Oh my God, that's incredible. Tell him Carl from Shadow Gallery loves his band super much." I used to be an avid winter camper, and my best friends and I would just listen to Gamma Ray over and over. Ronnie James Dio and Gamma Ray would just listen to that stuff over and over and over. And lo and behold, he went and did. He told Kai Hansen, and I don't know how much longer after that. And this is in that break that you're referring to. I don't know the length of time, but I got a message from Gamma Ray's touring company saying, do you want to come and be an opener for Gamma Ray on tour here in Europe? And it listed, you know, all the backline we would get and how much time we would have. And at the very bottom in the list of things we would get, it said a whole lot of fun. And I was like, I'm going on tour with effing Gamma Ray. I was so excited. So we started putting together a show, and it turns out that our drummer at the time, Kevin Safera, had things come up in his life and he had to bow out. And that all got tabled. We were not able to go and do that tour. We tried working with a drum machine and tried to find somebody, and we couldn't find the right drummer to go out into the road with and play this stuff. And so unfortunately, all I wound up having was that invitation from those awesome people. But yeah, in between Carved in Stone and Tyranny, we wanted to go out and we wanted to go do a tour, and we would have been over in Europe before we even were in serious pre-production, I believe, with the Tyranny stuff. So that took up quite a bit of time. I have some pretty cool live recordings of us working out with a drum machine in our studio rehearsal space. We were all just practicing our singing and trying to play some of those things, singing and playing them at the same time. And those were good days. But that was the break. That we weren't on break. We were very, very busy. So
yeah. And when did you find Joe Navolo, who substituted Kevin Sofera?
It was after that, when we decided we want to do a concept album, and I think Gary knew him. I think that's how we hooked up with him. Anyway, we went and checked him out, and my God, I fell in love with his style right out. Like 60 seconds into hearing him play, I was like, oh my God, yeah, this guy's perfect for this band. He's just like, he's like Scott Rockenfield sometimes, where he's all over his metal in the most magical musical way. And, you know, and then he turns into some crazy jazz guy. And then he just is like balls out metal drummer. And to me, he was the full package. And I've always believed, despite the terrible drumming on our very first CD, which was a demo tape, that experience taught me this. That experience taught me that if your drummer doesn't absolutely kick ass, your band will not kick ass, you know? And it all starts with the drums. Your drummer has got to feel the vibe of the songs, and he has got to, like, I think a drummer is totally lays the basis for the mood of a song and the power of a song, and supporting hard consonant falls on the vocal lines. And there's just so much that the drummer drives, and Joe did it all. He just checked every box. So it was well writing.
Meanwhile, you took part in several tribute albums released by Magna Carta. I've ticked a few: the Genesis tribute with Entangled, the Pink Floyd tribute with Time, the Yes tribute with Release, and of course the big project, The Working Man, with Mike Portnoy for the tribute to Rush, where all of you played almost 6 or 7 songs: Free Will, Jacob's Ladder, La Villa Straghiato, The Trees, Analog Kid, By Torrent the Snow Dog, Working Man. Too many songs. So you had a very big experience in covering other bands. I don't know if I missed something. I don't think I've missed something.
No,
that's all.
And the band that was before Shadow Gallery was a cover band called Sorcerer. I mean, we did originals and we did a lot of covers, and Mike Baker was the singer in that band. Our guitar player at the time, his name was Ron Evans, and he was the reason we got signed. Somebody had sent our demo tape of Sorcerer out to Mike Varney from Guitar Player magazine. And so we were going on stage and we were playing covers. You know, we were doing like 3 or 4 Queensryche songs, 3 or 4 Yngwie Malmsteen songs, because I had the guitar player to do it and I had the singer to do it. How lucky was I? There were not many cover bands in our area that were playing our set list. You know, we literally could. There was nothing we couldn't play. We could play anything we wanted. Or like if I wanted to play,
if someone and if someone listens to the Sorcerer stuff, I mean, wow, he will be amazed for sure. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, playing covers is something near and dear to my heart. I you know, I'm so influenced by my favorite artists, and it's an honor to go on stage and to be able to play a song by Rainbow. You know, it's an honor to go on stage and be able to play Sinner by Judas Priest. You know, I have such amazing, talented influences. So playing cover music, I love it. When we had the opportunity to play on those, you know, tribute CDs, to play the bass solo on Free Will, you know, completely not worthy, totally 100% not worthy to even play one note that Geddy Lee plays, and just such an honor. And like I saw All the World's a Stage tour, where they played 2112 in its entirety. They were on tour for the 2112 album. That was the first time I saw Rush. And I just walked out of there just like playing bass. That's all I want to do. It's the only thing I want to do. So
yeah. But in fact, you didn't stick only to bass. You played many more instruments.
Well, I like playing bass. I like playing instruments, but I like playing bass. Bass is fun.
Yeah. So you started working for Tyranny. You at that period, there were 4 songwriters in the band. You, Gary, Brent Allman, and Chris Ingalls. How is it having 4 songwriters in a band, trying to make a concept album, which definitely involves a lot of notes, for example, as we were speaking about Shadow Gallery, lots of emotions, lots of different feels. What was the procedure? Because it's really difficult to combine all the abilities that the 4 of you have.
So I guess maybe the best way to frame this is, once again, I'm totally blessed. I'm in a band with those gentlemen. I'm in a band today where every person in the band 150% loves and respects the other guys in the band and what they bring to the table. So like when you're writing an album, moments of tension that I think take away from artistic unity just never really happened. Now, at the time, I was a seriously driven individual and perhaps maybe a little too intense on the subject matter. But I don't have bad memories at all of the writing and the recording process. There were not any bad nights. We had a lot of technical problems. We had things go wrong. And we were under tight timelines, and we were just working so many hours on that thing. But when it came to the creative part and the performance part, everybody in the band was just unbelievably awesome to work with. So if you have that in the back of your head, I know the concept and the story is mine, but it's like everybody in Shadow Gallery was equally responsible for the quality of it, because I couldn't write a single thing of worth if the music, created by Brent, created by Gary, created by Chris, didn't match, what I was writing. And that was such a great experience. It was such a like, I would sit back some nights and just listen to what Baker had sung, and like the emotion in his voice on top of what, like something Gary had written. And I'm like, oh my God, he captured it so perfect. So Brent, Gary, Chris, they wrote pieces of music that I felt were so inspiring, that when it came to writing vocal lines that have emotion and words that had impact, that my job was made easy, or maybe not made easy, or like they made me have a very, very high bar in terms of what I wrote, because what they wrote was so great. You're a basketball fan. You know what it's like on the court. If somebody's really awesome, you want to be that good, right? You don't, or you got somebody awesome on your team. You want to not be the weak link. You want to be awesome the way they're awesome. So that was totally the vibe, for me. This was like some of the 80s Sixers teams, Julius Erving, Charles Barkley, Maurice Cheeks, guys like that. It's great.
Moses Malone, eh?
Your basketball, my friend.
Even Darrell Dawkins.
I got to tell you, I worked for Will Smith for many years at his East Coast house, and I worked for his father. His father had a studio, and I was his engineer, both for video and audio. Worked on many, many, many projects. So very close ties to the family. He had season tickets for the Sixers, front row, right under the basket, right by the opposing bench. So I would literally sit there on the very front row and be right across from Kobe Bryant. It was crazy, but I saw a lot of basketball. And I don't know if you know this, but like Mike Baker was one of the biggest basketball fans I've ever met. That Tyranny was a problem because, there'd be Sixers games on and we'd be working on vocals.
Didn't know that. I only knew that it was a huge Alice Cooper fan and a huge and an avid CD collector.
Yeah,
he had so many. Had a huge CD collection, and I know
yep.
that many of you discovered new music from Mike that he was buying.
He brought new music to every one of us. He gave me a love of Alice Cooper I never had before I met him. I always liked Alice Cooper, and I just saw Alice the other 2 weeks ago down at in Atlantic City, and I think he's 73 years old, and he was absolutely fantastic. What a showman! Yeah. There's not many people I think rival Freddie Mercury in terms of pure stage showmanship, but Alice Cooper certainly does. He commands an audience with a presence that is hard to put into words. He's just great.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking about the concept, you have this really heavy, I could say, and interesting concept involving things that back in 1998 were vastly considered as science fiction, but now we know that it's the harsh reality. All these conspiracy things and working for the government and being hacked and your computer being hacked. This back then was pure science fiction. How did you come up with that story?
Well, I mean, the reality is back then it was not pure science fiction. And, once I started doing my homework, it really opened up an entire world to me about technical espionage and what was capable in those circles. I had, so I guess a lot of this harkens back to, I had, if you've ever seen the movie JFK by Oliver Stone. So he hired a research assistant whose name was Robert Harris. Robert Harris at the time was the all-time winner on Jeopardy. He's got genius IQ, a genuine 100% photographic memory. Oliver Stone hires him to do all of the research and proving out of facts that the Warren Commission report was not true. And how do you prove it's not true? So Oliver Stone hires this guy, and the guy literally was a genius, and he did all the research. I saw him speak at Kutztown University here in Pennsylvania, and he stepped the audience through why the Warren Commission wasn't true, why that report, why it's not possible for what was put forward, a lone gunman, killing Kennedy. It didn't happen. And, there's a lot of concrete proof, but I believe like the most serious piece of evidence was a frame by frame analysis of the Zapruder film, where it becomes pretty obvious. If you know anything about ballistics, the kill shot comes from the front. Kennedy had already been shot in the throat. He was leaning forward. He was grasping at his throat. And, after that shot, 1.3 seconds later, the kill shot comes from the front and hits him in the head. And his head flies back. His brains fly out into the back of the car. Jacqueline Kennedy jumps out, trying to chase the back of his head off the car. And I came to a realization that to do certain things like put false evidence on the cover of Life magazine, to have all these people look at, what really happened and put forward something that wasn't true, meant that there had to be these very serious, powerful influencers that were able to establish these things. Now, reasons, I have no idea. I felt lied to. And I think that it became, pretty obvious that there is something going on behind the curtains that, and you're right, back then, this was all just wacky conspiracy theory stuff. And, at the end of the day, for me, I wrote a story. I simply told a story, but I did it was backed up by a ton of research. And I walked away pretty convinced that, there's really something to this. I don't know how much my vote really means. The media kind of drives what people believe, not common sense and rationalization. And depending on how they formulate a narrative, they can take an entire sector of a country and make it believe one thing, and they can take another entire sector of a country and make it believe something else. That is a very, very powerful thing. So it has to be very, very broad to be able to influence entire nations, sway opinions of entire nations. So I guess that's where that came from. Yeah.
And is it true that you had to record the album twice?
Parts of it, yeah. We had a pretty catastrophic hard drive failure. Brent one night, like the one yelling match we had in the whole recording of Tyranny. Brent, we were recording some stuff on ADAT tapes, and we had Pro Tools, but we had too many tracks. We didn't have enough ADAT players, and Pro Tools didn't have enough channels, so we were working with Pro Tools and ADATs. And I had this big metal filing cabinet, and I tried to run a really tight studio. We kept it clean, we kept it neat. So every night I told those guys, when you get done, eject all your tapes, put them in cases, put them in the correct spots inside of the filing cabinet. And one night, Brent doesn't do it. He leaves some tapes out, and it's the same night that there's a historic flooding rainstorm. And for the very first time that our studio ever had water come in, it came in that night. Guess where it came in at? Right over the master tapes that he had left out. I can laugh about it today, but it was not good back then. So, but think about it, hard drive recording was in its infancy, and clearly, the fates were against us.
Perhaps it was about the concept. Someone had hacked your studio. And learned that you. By the way, I was totally caught by surprise when I got the Tyranny CD. It was around, I think, end of July, when I got the promo CD from Magna Carta. And I was just about to leave in order to do a face-to-face interview with Riccardo Confessori, the drummer of Anga, that were releasing their album Fireworks back then. He was in Athens doing interviews with the press, and I was going there for a face-to-face interview. And the mailman came and told me, CD for you, Sakis. And he threw me the CD. Went in the car and saw the Shadow Gallery. What the hell? Are they releasing a new album? There was nothing on press, nothing on magazines. We had received nothing at all. And all of a sudden I saw a new Shadow Gallery CD. I said, okay, interview can wait for 5 minutes. I'm going in to listen to a couple of tracks. I listened to the first 2 tracks and I said to myself, if I don't leave now, I'm going to miss the interview, because I'm going to listen to the whole CD. It sounds exactly as I wanted. So did you know anything about the whole process of promoting the album? Because it was done very hastily, I could say, because was the album ready just before it was handed out to the press, or was it just that thing?
So, I believe some of that was probably falls on Shadow Gallery's own heads. We were very behind when we were supposed to turn in our master tapes. And we had committed to deadlines, missed the deadlines on a couple of occasions, more than once. So I believe Magna Carta was very hesitant to do any promotion until they solidly have that asset in their hands from us. But I mean, it's one thing when you're a business person, and I totally understand that they have distribution deals and they have to turn in X number of releases and they're a new label and all that stuff. On the flip side of that, we were very driven to do something, that totally satisfied us, that we wanted to create something extraordinary. And I don't believe extraordinary is done until we say it's done. And I don't believe extraordinary happens in 4 weekends over July. It takes a lot of time to really write, record, sing, mix, all that stuff. And it took us a long time to do it. And once again, in hindsight, there are things I would change, that I would have done different, but only mechanical things. When it came to what we had written, when it came to what I call the magical certain something in performance, I wouldn't change one note. I wouldn't change one note of anything that anybody in the band had done. I was so proud of everybody, because I just, and art is a funny thing, art has to, some forms of art will appeal to some people, and that same form of art will appeal to not appeal to other people. So it's, I think to be true as an artist, you have to do it for you, for what makes you happy, and just put it out there. And if people like it, great. And if they don't like it, great. If you made yourself happy, you can be proud of what you did and hold your head high. And that's all we wanted to do. And, you know, maybe we were in deep when we were doing it, but it took us how long it took us, and that's how long it took us. So
yeah, and there must have been some really funny, strange, or interesting incidents during the recordings. I read Brent who wrote something about his very strange injury in the studio. Strange and serious injury, I could say.
Yeah, he hurt his back. And that wasn't the only, that was just one of hundreds of funny things. Stuff like that happened all the time. We were the Keystone Cops at times. It was hilarious, but you know, we were young, we were learning our way in the world. And if you get hurt with a stupid vocal booth tour, then you just got to get up the next day and go to work, you know. I had this giant studio chair, like I bought it at a yard sale. It was really comfortable because I was spending 16 hours a day in it. So I needed something really comfortable. And I forget how he did this. I think he was playing guitar solos on something, and he falls over backwards in it, and he hurt himself doing that too. Knocked this whole giant chair over and crashed stuff over. That was just daily experience. So, but yes.
Yeah, and on the song Christmas Day, you mentioned once again Alaska, a state that you had written a song about in Carved in Stone. What's so special about Alaska? And you keep mentioning.
So nothing, there's more to the story. I'll just leave it at that. And Alaska is,
okay.
The song Alaska is actually part of the Tyranny story down the road, part of the Room 5 story down the road, but.
Okay. I think that one of the highlights of the album is the song, I believe, with the participation of James LaBrie as the father of the main character. How did he end up singing on the record? He was part of Magna Carta roster back then as a solo artist.
Yeah, so when we were in the process of getting signed, Pete Morichelli from Magna Carta sent me the cassette of Images and Words, and Images and Words immediately became one of my Desert Island discs. I thought James LaBrie did one of the greatest vocal performances I've ever heard in a recording on that. I put him in rarefied air as well. And like, just James has this great ability to like capture an emotion in a song. When it came time to like pick guests that we wanted to use on the album, he was the first guy, you know, I said, we should talk to Magna Carta about getting James LaBrie to play the father part on here. I think he can really capture that emotion that I'm looking for. And we went to Magna Carta and they got a hold of him, and that was the start of a pretty cool friendship. He's not just a great singer, he's a great human being. So
Go ahead. Tell me.
Go ahead.
After this participation, you worked very closely with him on both Mal Masler albums and the Leonardo project with Trent Gardner. So you had a long-lasting relationship with him, writing songs. He trusted you to write songs for his solo albums, which is really great. I mean, he must have really liked your ability to write music and compose music.
Yeah, and maybe in addition to that, I think we really connected. We got to spend a lot of quality time together, working together. I think you develop a rapport when it's just you and a singer in a studio. And it's late at night, and you're working through ideas and you're talking through producing, and um, I think that we had a good connection, and I will go to my grave just saying, I cannot believe I get to work with James LaBrie. I can't believe it. It's just,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, like we had been in touch with Ronnie James Dio's management agency about having him sing the part that DC Cooper had wound up singing. And I always thought it would have been really
The absolute highlight.
It would have been great to have James LaBrie and Ronnie James Dio on the same CD, being mine. And listen, nothing to take away from DC Cooper. I believe everything happens for a reason. We had a meeting with Ronnie James Dio on tour when he played in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we went to the backstage place where we were supposed to meet. He never came out to even talk to us. So I believe everything happens for a reason. And I believe DC Cooper was really the right person to sing that part, or Ronnie James Dio would have done it. He would have come out. We would have talked. We would have met. We would have worked it out. And so what we have in terms of what got released is the way it was supposed to be, the way the universe wanted to see it happen.
Yeah. And DC Cooper was also part of the Magna Carta roster because, if I'm not wrong, by that time, Royal Hand was signed to Magna Carta for the US territory. In Europe, there were two other labels, but for at that time in 1997, 1998, they were signed, Royal Hand were signed to Magna Carta, if some people do not know that, especially in Europe. And I can say that it was really a highlight of everything I watched live when we saw you in Greece perform with DC live. That was partly my proposal to the organizer of the show. Let's do something special. Let's bring DC on stage.
Yeah, that was my highlight too.
Yeah, great memories. And who's Laura Yeager, who sang the female vocals on Spoken Words? Search about her, and she has only sung on 2 Shadow Gallery records. Nothing
Yeah,
more.
she was a girl that Gary knew that was a singer. She also did the backup vocals on the
for Room 5.
No, she sang lead vocals on Room 5 for those little parts. But when we did Time, the Pink Floyd Time tribute album, she did those female. She did those parts well. Yeah,
she didn't do anything else.
No, nothing that got released. No, her and her husband had like a band, but Gary said, we were talking about who to use for the female vocal part, and same thing. We were trying to think what would be a great female voice name that would like capture the emotion, be famous. And Gary said, you know what, before you really in your head commit to somebody, I think you really need to listen to my friend Laura. And we brought her into the studio, and I heard her sing, and I was like, wow, like the way she sounds when with singing along with Mike, I thought was such a great marriage. Their voices were so complimentary. Not everybody's like that. You can put 2 singers in a room and have them do a duet, and for whatever reason, harmonically, their frequencies aren't lining up. And but Laura and Mike really sounded magical together. So glad we did that.
Is the photo, this photo, from a farm that you lived by that time?
Yep. So I lived on a 325 acre working farm, huge farm. And Brent was living with us at the time. Oh, that was some fun. That was some fun right there. But yeah, we would go onto those, it's very hilly. We live right by the Pocono Mountains, and my backyard, there wasn't a flat part on it. Everything was like really steep hills. In the winter, we would walk all the way to the top of these hills and take these huge truck inner tubes and go screaming down the snow. Like the snow would melt during the day and freeze at night, and it would be very icy, and you would go 100 miles an hour on these inner tubes, and many acres because the hills were so high. Anyway, the view from up there was great. And I knew a photographer, and he had like a really super long telephoto lens. I said, how would it look if we stood on the one hill, you walk down the valley up the other hill, and put your telephoto lens up there and shoot across at us? And he said, you guys could stand really far apart and it would compress you, so you all look like you were standing together. So literally in that picture, Brent's 25 feet behind me, but if you look at the picture, he's right aside of me. It looks like we're all standing right aside of each other, but we're all very
yeah. This is the picture for the ones who haven't seen it. What were the reactions of the press and the fans to the album? What do you remember? I think that you were in the position to take the next step and reach a dream theater-like status if you had been touring for this album. What happened then? You didn't reach the full potential in terms of popularity, and you only have many people saying that Shadow Gallery is a gem, is an underrated gem, especially this album, Tyranny.
Yeah. Well, I guess it really boiled down to the fact that I had a son, and I had some hard decisions to make as a father. Do I want to, be present in the proper measure in his life? Or do I want to go out and hit the road? So I had competing priorities there. I had Shadow Gallery. I had to work because I didn't make enough money with Shadow Gallery to not work and pay for a house and, pay for a family, get medical insurance for my newly born child and those sorts of things. So I didn't get to, go back or prepare to do a live thing until much later when my kids were old enough where it was okay for me to spend that much time away that it takes to rehearse to get good and so on and so forth. But you are correct. I think that had I not been in that position, we probably could have went out and toured. I came from a live background where, I played out every week for years with Mike Baker, with Sorcerer. We played all over Eastern Pennsylvania, Central New Jersey, and did very well on the club circuit. And playing live was something I loved. It's one thing to sit in a studio and pat yourself on the back. Hey, that was a good take. It's a whole different thing to, finish playing Save Us by Halloween and hear an audience just go berserk, so I would have liked that opportunity, but once again, everything for a reason. I can't tell you what the reason was, but kids, I think it's important to be a father if you're going to be a father as well. So
you have my respect for that. You made the right decision. That's for sure. Even though we missed lots of Shadow Gallery shows and most probably more Shadow Gallery albums. I think that caring about your family is the utmost that you can do in your life, and not the band. Why did you choose to have the continuation of the concept in Room 5 and not in Legacy? which was the next album?
Well, so the ideas for Room 5 were already slowly germinating while Legacy was, being created. It goes back to a story or an idea isn't ready until it's ready. I had no intentions of trying to push an idea that I wasn't, thoroughly convinced was going to be up to our quality level, in terms of my contribution being the story, what the lyrics would be, what it would say, the nuts and bolts of a story. The Tyranny in Room 5 very different from our other CDs because our other CDs are a whole lot more. I could just take a song and write about whatever, Tyranny in Room 5, they very much took an approach like a movie, where everything that I would describe about the story to my bandmates as we were creating it was based in visualizations, and I would talk through what the scenes were, not words, because I could create those later. I would talk through the scene. This is a scene where this is what happens in the scene. And I think it's easy to like write a standalone song, kind of easy to write a standalone song. It's a whole lot more challenging to write a concept story where the music really captures the emotion of what the story is about from song to song to song to song. And then you put them all together and it feels cohesive. And then you do it again to continue it. That is something that, and maybe we're just slow. Maybe I'm just slow. That takes time. So Legacy was a natural thing to put in the middle there because what was being worked on was not ready. And it worked out good because once again, on Room 5, I had done just a ton of research on virology. And I really gave myself an education on those sorts of things that I wrote about, so I could, at least have some accuracy in the things that I was saying. Not that everything that I say is accurate. It's just that I know I got close enough. I know it was grounded in fact. It was grounded in research. It was grounded in true science, not just wacky made up stuff, So Legacy had to go in the middle.
Yeah. Huh? The 29th of October 2008 marks the date when Mike Baker died. Which is your fondest memory of it? I've heard you say lots of great things about him, especially about his performance on this great album. And you have mentioned several times that he really became the character. And I heard you all praise his ability to sing over and over and over again without intervals. Can you tell us more about this?
Sure. Yeah. So, more than anybody in the band, Mike and I, we were friends from when we were really, really young. I joined Sorcerer probably in the real early 80s, 82, maybe something like that. 81, 82, I joined Sorcerer. And the guitar player, Ron Evans, he was unbelievable guitar player, and he really made me the bass player I am today. He said, we need to find musicians. He said, I know of a singer that I heard can sing Geddy Lee and Robert Plant. So we went to one of the shows that he was playing, and Ron, when that band finished playing, we walked up to Mike and literally just said, you need to give him your resignation tonight. We're going to do something pretty serious. And Mike did. Yeah, I know it's hilarious. And at the same time, we did the same thing with Chris Ingalls. We went and grabbed Chris Ingalls. He was in another band, and he was just like playing Bach, and he was playing the solo to "I'll See the Light Tonight" by Yngwie Malmsteen on the guitar, and we had to steal him. Unfortunately, it was from some friends of mine, but we had to do it. So we had this nucleus, and Mike and I spent so much time working together, writing songs like for Sorcerer, way before the Shadow Gallery stuff. So that whole me as a producer and engineer, Mike as a singer in a vocal booth, that goes back to when we were kids, and just partying and working through the night, and just walking out. Like, it was such a watershed moment for me the night we finished his singing parts for the Sorcerer song "Eyes in the Night." And I know the world hasn't heard it, but it's my all-time favorite Mike Baker performance. I remember I did this rough mix, and it was pretty good. And he and I, we sat back and we listened to it. We were like, I was like, dude, listen to you. Just listen to you here. You're unbelievable. You're like Jeff Tate, man.
And Jeff Tate was really at his prime that period of time. And if people listen to the Sorcerer stuff, they will say, you would be the next Queensryche, you would release the next Warning or the next Rage for Order. I think the next Warning was the best. Okay.
Yeah, probably could have. Mike was like that. Mike was very much like Jeff Tate. The night that Ron and I met him and saw him for the very first time, like, no bullshit, he was singing Led Zeppelin, like You Close Your Eyes and you were listening to Robert Plant. He sang Rush, and like Close Your Eyes, you were listening to Geddy Lee. It was crazy. But Ron and I, we were more at that point, we were more that whole Iron Maiden, Judas Priest kind of a thing. And so when we got Mike in the band, when Sorcerer started playing out, we were like Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest. Like, we could play every song on there and we sounded like Judas Priest totally. So Rob Halford, I hold him in rarefied air. Baker, singing Exciter or whatever, anything by Rob Halford. Like, he convinced me there wasn't anything he couldn't sing. But back to your original point. So Mike and I, we were really tight when we were working on Tyranny. And I was like, dude, you, like, in your career, you've done it all, right? You can sing anybody. We got to do something to like make you take a next step. And I think like you should really think about like do whatever you need to do to become this character in this story. And he totally was on board with that. And like I was a perfectionist with him. I would make him sing stuff over and over and over until he captured the right thing. And he did it. Like, to today, I just listen to every little nuance that he did in his vocal performance. And I'm just like, that's amazing. That's amazing that he like put the time in, would go home at night, sit there and think about what he was singing about, and like do it like an actor in a film. It really was like I'm not sure. Pick a great director, Ridley Scott. Pick a great actor like Russell Crowe. It was like directing Russell. I felt like Ridley Scott directing Russell Crowe. He put himself into that role, just like Russell Crowe did in Gladiator. He became Gladiator. I can't I can't not watch Russell Crowe in something and not think about how different he seems from when he acted in Gladiator, and that was Ridley Scott's genius. But Baker was that. He owned it. He became it. He dedicated himself to it. He didn't care how much work it took, how many days it took, how many months it took, how many takes. He just didn't care. It was just another day at the office for him. He'd walk out of the booth all happy.
Yeah. And is it true that his health problems prevented him from flying and doing tours and all that stuff?
Well, later on, yeah, we were all concerned about him, and rightly so. He was not the healthy kid anymore when he started to get a little bit older. And
how old? I mean, he died 45 years old. I mean, he's young.
Yep.
He was too young.
Yep. Yeah, and who knows? He smoked. He was a smoker. Came from a family with heart problems. It was a bad combination. You know, he started not. The Mike I remember, the younger Mike, was a great basketball player. He was a basketball player on a local, you know, pickup team called the Ormrod Rats, I think it was. And I used to go watch him play, you know, and he was great. He was athletic. He had a lot of stamina, you know, but later on, he just didn't have that the way he used to have that. And there was definitely concern, and it was valid. So.
Mm-hmm. I would like you to tell me your 5 best songs of Tyranny, starting from your 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, 2nd, and your best one. Boy. Even though it's a concept album, I think you can distinguish the songs between.
Right, give me a second.
Yeah, you have to check the songs.
I've never even thought about this, but.
In fact, I'm having my editors do this thing for the whole track listing of the album. But as it is a concept album, I do it more loose for you.
Oh, this is tough.
Yeah, no. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
All right.
Shall we start from the 1st place or the 5th place?
We'll go from 5th.
Okay. So we have drum roll.
I'll go War for Sale 5, Chased 4. Oh, damn. Christmas Day 3, New World Order 2, and Ghost of a Chance 1.
I was pretty sure that you would say Ghost of a Chance. You have mentioned that it's one of your favorite Shadow Gallery songs ever.
Yeah. So I was at a part of the story where I was having a bit of a writer's block, and I loved what Chris and Brent had wrote so much. Like when I talk about it, I have goosebumps right now just talking about like the first time I heard the music, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Anyway, I took a vacation in the Adirondack Mountains of New York State. And back then I was an avid mountain climber. I did a lot of mountain climbing. So I went out one night, late at night by myself, and I climbed to the top of a mountain in the heart of the southern Adirondacks called Cat Head Mountain. And on the top of Cat, there was a decent trail. So I wasn't just like climbing nothing, but it was a full moon that night. And I got to the top of the mountain, and there is a New York State fire tower on the top of that mountain. And I was able to climb up the tower to this little thing you can stand on. So on top of a mountain, on top of a tower, full moon above me, and these huge billowy clouds. I was really close to them. It was like a low cloud ceiling, but the full moon was there, and then this giant cloud would come and like blow past it. I spent most of the night up there with a little Sony Walkman cassette deck, handheld cassette thing, listening to Ghost of a Chance,
the music.
listening to the music, and I had a pad and paper, and the moon was bright enough that I could write and see my words. And when I came down off of the mountain, I had Ghost of a Chance done in its entirety, the vocal lines and all of the lyrics. I didn't change a thing. And it was that was a magical moment for me. I got Mike in the studio. I went, I sang it, gave it to Mike, said, go learn this. He came back in the studio. We always, roughed stuff out first. And I listened back to the rough of what he had done. I said, this is a fucking hit. This song is great. And never look back. That is my personal opinion of it. I know other people don't like it. It's mellow. But, in terms of me just being an artist and trying to please myself, I achieved that with that song.
Mm-hmm. Any other special story like this behind any of the other songs? Do you have any other this kind of story?
Yeah, most of the songs. So New World Order, I had the whole story framed out and storyboarded, and I was like, Gary, we got to write something really, really crazy, operatic. I just want this to be like Queen meets Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. And so he's like, all right, let's just set up a songwriting night and we'll just start going through some ideas, So I went over to his house, and he had his keyboard rig set up, and we were upstairs at the top of his house, and there were like these dormer windows, and he started like that whole intro part. He was like working out, these chordal arrangements for it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm singing along like, wow, yeah, this is it, man. This is what it will be. And this huge storm kicks up. And the storm got so violent, it broke one of the dormer windows above us. Glass came down into the room, rain came into the room. And we were both like, oh my God, what the F just happened here? But we were like looking at each other going, this is a sign right here. This crap, this is a sign.
And the song itself speaks about a government agent who searches for, who hunts down the protagonist, the main character. So this was a sign, in fact, that you were doing an evil song. And
yep.
you reached to Gary to write this orchestral song because he had done such a thing in Gossip in the hidden track section.
Yeah.
I think that he had added that part without the rest of you knowing that. You just found, most of you just found it out when the CD was released.
Well, not me.
You were part of this conspiracy. But I think that poor Mike didn't know that.
Yeah, no, none of my friends. They start hearing that knock and they're like, what on earth? And it's a brilliant piece. And like Gary has a flair for creating the dramatic. So I like, in my head, everything's a movie. And he writes a soundtrack that supports every movie. He can always come up with something that's just like, you swear he might have missed his calling. He maybe should go and write cinematic music for films, because he is one of the few people I know that's capable of doing it at an excellent level. But he's perfect for what he did in New World Order. That's one of my all-time favorite songs. And so much of it was, him inspiring me. I went in with, one idea of kind of what it should be. And, he kind of shifted it to something else because what he wrote it was right. It was correct. It was just amazing, and just like working with Brent, just like working with Chris, working with Gary just feels so natural and great and comfortable, and never an awkward moment, never a tense moment, never a, well, I like what I wrote better than what you wrote kind of a moment, So he wrote a winner in that,
And I guess that you get that question very often. What happens with a possible vinyl edition of Tyranny? What's the situation with the rights with Magna Carta? I know it's very, very complicated.
Well, as far as I know, if I want to continue the story, I can go right ahead and do so. They don't own the story.
Yeah, but can you issue this album on vinyl? Do you have the right to?
That I do not know.
I guess nobody knows about it.
Well, Gary would be the one closest to knowing. There's people in my band that know the business side of things. I'm not one of them.
So I don't know if you have something more to add to this Tyranny story. I think we've covered lots of aspects on this album. I have to say that from the time that we arranged the interview, I have listened to the album at least 10 more times, and it sounds so fresh. It's as if it was released yesterday. I mean, I have listened to this album millions of times. It's one of my top 10 albums of all time, and I keep on listening. I even had it on my car to listen to the CD today, and my wife asked me, "You keep on listening to Tyranny for at least 5 days in a row. What's happening?" I'm having an interview, and so it means that you don't know the album. I have listened to this album at least 1 million times. So imagine you, but it's an experience. It's that you need to listen more, even though you know every single detail on this album.
Yep.
So thank you very much for this conversation.
Yeah.
It's been an honor.
I am humbled, to hear those words. I'm just like you. My favorite stuff is timeless to me. Rage for Order is my second all-time favorite album, and I've listened to it over and over and over and over all the time since it came out in, I think, 86. And I got to see the tour. I hold it in a special place. I just think it's perfect in every single way. I think it's just like, I got a great wife. The longer I'm married to her, the better she seems to me. Good music's the same way. You shouldn't get tired of it. You shouldn't close the CD player and not listen to it for a long time. It should always be fresh. And the thing about music goes through phases, but the greatest stuff, it never gets old. It always still sounds fresh to me. Rage for Order still sounds fresh to me the way it sounded the first time I heard Walk in the Shadows.
As I have always said to Jeff Tate about Rage for Order, the only thing I would change is the photograph.
But think about the time period, right?
Yeah.
So you've got all these hair bands doing the hair thing. You got Judas Priest dressing like they dressed on Turbo. Of course, Queensryche was dressed like that. EMI came in with probably 5 girls for hair, 5 girls for makeup. They probably came in with 3 people just measure the guys to make the clothing that they're wearing. I had heard the coat Jeff Tate wore on that photo session was like $900, custom made for him. I don't know if it's true, but I heard that.
Yeah.
record companies get a say, you know. And think about it, you're a young artist, your band's breaking, you know, your record company wants to take you to the next level, and they show up with an army of people that want to make the image to match what's current to make you more famous. What do you say? Do you say no? You don't say
Next top
no.
model.
Say,
Next top model. That's so. Thank you
exactly.
very much, Carl. Thank you very much for this interview about you.
I'm honored.
So